the best that I possibly can be, better than I was yesterday. When I started taking the lessons that I had learned growing up in the SEAL teams and applying them and seeing how they worked and learning, either solidifying them or sometimes making small adjustments to them, all the principles that I ended up talking about and I ended up writing about and that I ended up employing when I was in tasking to Bruiser, all those had kind of been solidified somewhat when I was in my first combat deployment as a platoon commander in Baghdad. So the things that I talk about all the time, cover and move, you absolutely have to cover and move. Keeping things simple, prioritize and execute, decentralized command. I hadn't quite turned those into the solid principles that they eventually became when I started teaching them to the young SEALs, but that's where I learned them. And so those are the lessons. Those lessons were really clear, and I learned them, I learned them from the Vietnam SEALs that raised me in the SEAL teams. Those guys that taught me the initial things. I mean, I've had a guy on my podcast named Roger Hayden. He's the guy that taught me cover and move. And there was other guys that were saying it, but he kind of explained, hey, here's what's going on, because he had been to Vietnam, multiple deployments, and he had been in a lot of firefights, and he explained to me, this is what's gonna happen.
How to always have self-control with Jocko Willink. When Jocko started taking his lessons he learned in the Navy SEALs and started applying them to his life, they became deep-rooted. There's people in the world that have skills and strengths and talents that you will never have. Notions that you can be whatever you want to be, they are fairy tales. We all have limitations. Jocko Willink builds trust by giving autonomy. Give trust to build trust. Have discipline and self-control every day, even when life is hard.
Because there's people in the world that have skills and strength and talent that I will never have. I mean, some of these notions that you can be whatever you want to be as long as you want it bad enough, those are not true. They're fairy tales. All have limitations. And I don't have the right genes to be an Olympic weightlifting champion. I don't have the right genetics to be an Olympic champion sprinter or a gymnast or whatever sport you want to name. Now, sure, if I trained my whole life, perhaps I could have achieved some high level in those sports, but I can tell you I do not have the DNA to be the best in the world in those categories. So what does that mean? Does that mean that I give up? Does that mean that I quit? Of course not. Not at all. First of all, before the war, the military sent me to college. So I had to go to college. And as I said before, I was super focused when I went to college. I'd been in the SEAL teams for 10 years. I was a go-getter. I was a hard charger. I was like, oh, you want me to read this book? Boom. I would sit down and just force myself to read it. And then got back to the SEAL teams. And like when I went to college, I literally read every single thing that I was assigned. And nobody does that in college. Nobody does that. I read every single page of every single thing I was assigned during college. That's ridiculous. It's almost a waste of time. It's almost embarrassing. Echo definitely thinks it's a waste of time. But it was because I could lock my brain down and get it done. Then get back to the teams, and in the teams, officer in the teams, you have a lot of administrative paperwork to do, evaluations and after actions reports and all these things. And I would do the same thing. I just go into lockdown mode and put my brain on it, and boom, I'd go through it and just get it done. I would just be able to focus.
And I realized, okay, I need to actually put these principles in a field manual that people can pragmatically take the lessons, take the principles, and apply them to what's happening in the world. And that's what I try to do actually what I did was I started off with what I considered leadership building blocks 1, 2, and 3 from my life, from the SEAL teams, when I got to the SEAL teams, from these specific events or these specific scenarios, and I applied those for the rest of my career and for the rest of my life, and I apply them today. My first platoon, to summarize the story, we were doing a training operation, we get into this tactical situation, everyone in my platoon is focused on one area. Everyone's looking down their weapons, waiting for a threat to expose itself, which means you got 16 guys looking down their weapons, and I'm waiting for someone to make a call. I was a new guy. I'm waiting for someone above me in the chain of command to say, hey, move here, or hey, move forward, or make some kind of a decision.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment for more content.